Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, very fitting, we're going to be talking about the importance of health and fitness during pregnancy.
Yeah. So, do you want to start with a little update on where you're at?
Yeah, so if you've been following me on Instagram, you know that this has been a very interesting pregnancy for me. I would say it's a lot healthier as far as just compared to my first, but we were diagnosed maybe around 20 weeks, 24 weeks, something like that. We were diagnosed with fetal growth restriction. So that's if baby is measuring below the 10th percentile. And so that coupled with extra growth ultrasounds and just checkups. And because I got COVID early on in my pregnancy, which I've gotten COVID twice, both during pregnancies, which is interesting. So I don't know if it's like a weakened immune system
It
or
is, yeah.
something, or I just happened to be exposed twice and then I don't know, but
Yeah.
I've gotten it twice now when I'm pregnant. And so we've had some extra ultrasounds and it's just been this like up and down thing. They were like, hey, we might need to deliver at 32. And then, yeah, it was just super early. You're not technically considered at full gestation until 37 or 38 weeks. So 32 is pretty early. I mean, you could be in the NICU from anywhere from like a month or two and have a pretty small little one. Basically, because if they feel like baby's not growing inside you, it's like, hey, let's get baby out so we can start working on her, on from the outside. But we made it to 32 and we had additional biophysical profiles. So it's not quite a growth ultrasound, but they're still measuring different health metrics and things like that. And then I was like, oh my gosh, if we make it to 37 or 38, that will be fantastic. Well, as of today, we are 40 plus 2. So we are past due date. We actually have another growth ultrasound tomorrow. So that will be Friday the 14th. And they're talking about induction, but now because we've gone too far, not because we need to induce early. But I'm still gonna just kind of see how things go tomorrow and make a decision. But we are trying to do all the things. So we're keeping active, we're walking, we're eating dates and pineapple and red raspberry leaf tea and doing all the things. So we'll see. But yes, as of right now, I am still very pregnant.
Yeah. Due date was Tuesday, right?
Yeah, it was the 11th. So, and which is weird because like when you go in to your doctor, they always ask you when the date of your last menstrual cycle was. And so they try to calculate typically about when ovulation happens and how far along you are. So our original due date was actually the 5th. And
Oh,
then, yeah. So this happened with Colton, but they had actually moved the due date forward, I believe. And for this one, they moved it back. So it's very hard to like hear from someone. It's like, oh, you're going to be pregnant an extra week.
yeah.
um, so yeah, and I thought for certain that we were going to deliver between the 5th and the 11th, and that did not
Here
happen.
we are
So
on the
so here
13th.
we are.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear about this, and we can obviously talk about like the crux of the episode is the importance of fitness during pregnancy and just kind of dispelling some myths, but
Yeah.
also just contrasting because we're at the end of this pregnancy for you and being able to contrast your first to your second and the differences in how you handled your fitness, your health through it, I think will be really fun.
Yeah, I agree. It's been very, very different. And I will just say, because if if you're an OG, you know that I had some pregnancy. I don't know if I would really want to say complications, but just things that arise, and that made me really scared to work out. So I didn't, and I kind of regret it a little bit. And it's so hard because it's like hindsight's 2020, right? Like I can look back and be like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, because Colton was fine, everything was fine. But I didn't know that at the time, and it's really, really scary when you're in the moment and you just don't want to do anything that could potentially complicate your pregnancy or anything like that. But I wish I would have adapted. And so that's some of the things that we can talk about today is why I feel that way now, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, what you have been able to do. But yeah, and I think those fears, like, it's something I can see definitely why you would feel that way. It's not something I've gone through myself, but they're really, really valid, right? There's strong feelings on top of like first pregnancy feelings, and there's all these
Yeah.
rules, right? Of like, don't eat sushi and don't do this, and the alcohol and like all the things that kind of are just naturally accepted restrictions. And so working out is also one that like some doctors will still perpetuate, don't lift anything over 20 pounds, or, don't
Yeah.
work out if you haven't been working out already during your pregnancy. And so it's really natural to just have that fear of like, is this going to be the thing that prevents me from having a healthy child? And I can only imagine that that would be like a debilitating fear. So
Yeah.
sometimes you got to go through it and like know that things are okay in order to like give yourself that permission. But I'll also say that like this is where it's like if you're at the point where you see all the people on social media working out during pregnancy, there's a lot of that now, which is really empowering and inspiring to show that it's possible. But if you're seeing it and you're like, but I don't work out. I'm not used to this. I don't even know good form when I'm not pregnant. Like, how am I supposed to go about it? This is where having a reliable professional in your corner is even more important. And I will just kind of like umbrella this whole episode with fitness during pregnancy. If it's new, have a professional guide you. And I think a lot of times people will skip to the postpartum of like, oh, I'll work with a coach when I need to lose weight postpartum. But in fact, if you want to have healthy, safe activity during pregnancy, I would say having a coach is really beneficial for that reason, to put your mind at ease. Like, don't second guess yourself. Don't worry about it. Your form is good. This exercise is safe for you to do. You're going to feel great, and we can adapt as we go, is so much, I feel like, more weight off the mind if you're not like already really well inducted into fitness, or really well versed, or if you're not a coach yourself.
Yeah. And there are a lot of pre and postnatal professionals on social media who I feel like do a really, really good job trying to dispel certain myths, because that is, and I will say, and we've like this happens everywhere, right? It's like there are studies that will come out, but it takes a long time for that to trickle down to like doctors and OBs, because they have just had they have their like protocols and everything for a very long time. And so it's very hard to have those things change. But it used to be, don't lift anything over 15 to 25 pounds. And like that's just this blanket statement that they give you, or, you shouldn't lift, you shouldn't start any sort of exercise if you haven't been doing that already. And so a lot of those things have been dispelled. And so a lot of the research is changing. And I will say it's also very difficult to study pregnant women because a
Yeah.
lot, yeah, they just don't want to do anything, which is very, very understandable. But then that's also puts us in a tough position because a lot of things are like, well, this hasn't been studied, this hasn't been studied, this hasn't been studied. But like anecdotally, like this is what we have found.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's really the only type of research that you can really conduct on pregnant women is observational research.
Yeah.
But I think what has been good about the past like 10 years or so is that fitness research has, I mean, boomed, honestly. This whole industry has boomed. And at least the amount of observational studies on pregnant women and exercise, and pregnant women and types of eating, and pregnant women and this and that has increased a ton. And we're seeing all the anecdotal evidence of people's experiences, and how many, like, the things that really get me, that I'm sure like you probably see more of it on your feed than I do, because you're actually pregnant and you post about it. But
Yes.
like the CrossFitters that like get pregnant and they're still like walking on their hands, and doing muscle ups and crazy stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, I mean, they were doing that before, and it's not high threshold work for them. So yeah,
Yeah.
they can still do it to an extent, right? In this phase of, it's all relative to what your skill levels and ability levels are. But just to show the depths to which you can be capable during a pregnancy.
Yeah. And this is why I think that strength training is so amazing when it comes to pregnant women, because there is so many different ways that you can modify exercises to, meet your ability, or base, like you can change things just as like your stance based on how you're feeling. So like, for example, you might be able to deadlift your entire pregnancy. But once you get to third trimester, your belly is pretty big. If you're anything like me, it's pretty big. So you might need to take a wider stance than normal, because like you got to accommodate for how your body's changing. So I think it's really great that you can do it regardless of what stage you're in, regardless of what your ability is. And like, also like if you're having aches and pains, or if you're having like, I know that some people have really bad back pain when they're pregnant, or they have, just whatever ailments that you have, like you can modify and adapt. And that's why I really, really love strength training during pregnancy, because I just think that not only is it going to help your body prepare for a healthy pregnancy, but also labor and delivery and postpartum. You're just going to be in such a better state if you prioritize that. And I also just want to put this caveat, like you do not have to lift like 4, 5, 6, 7 days a week. Like, don't feel like you have to do that, because I think that's really going to set yourself up for failure, especially first trimester, if you're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
um, but just kind of having that like in your back pocket is really just going to set you up to have a really, really great pregnancy and postpartum experience.
Yeah, and recovery postpartum too. I
Oh
know
yeah.
that that is a much quicker, and I don't even like, I know that using this term is taboo, but I mean this solely from like a healing sense. The bounce back I've heard is a lot quicker too,
Oh,
in
100%.
terms of actual tissue damage and healing. And you know what? I was thinking to myself, I was like, oh, darn, you know what? We should have waited till after you delivered to record this episode, because then we could contrast like if your delivery was easier or not. Because I know you've been joking the past couple of times we've met up of like, labor was 36 hours last time. So I hope it's a little quicker.
That would be nice.
Yeah. But I'm sure you've
Yeah,
seen it with
we
your
can
clients too.
We can do, oh yeah, I have countless clients who have said that they didn't do anything, their first pregnancy. They hired a coach, and their experience, not just throughout the pregnancy, but postpartum, was just like night and day difference. And they were like, I can't believe I didn't do this with my first.
Yeah. So walk me through like some tangible examples for you of like, okay, no strength training basically in first pregnancy. Second one, you have been pretty consistent with it overall. Like it stayed a part of it through, I mean, up to now really, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean, I was at the gym today.
yeah. So what are some of the like pregnancy symptoms, ailments, aches, pains, day-to-day things that you've noticed differently in this pregnancy that you would maybe attribute to strength training?
Yeah, so the other part of this is really difficult, because this is my second pregnancy. So like my body has gone through this before.
Mhm.
So is it that like, oh, my feet don't hurt as bad because they've already grown a little bit. Like they've already stretched. Like my uterus has already done this before, so like it knows what to do. So it's really, really hard to say, but I mean, I do feel a lot better. I do feel a lot better this pregnancy. And I still felt pretty good my first, but like my feet are not as sore. I mean, I still wear sneakers all day. But I don't like, is that like a preventative thing? Like, so I just kind of already know to do that. But I feel really good in that way. I feel more energized. I didn't take I don't think I really napped at all, maybe once this entire
Wow.
pregnancy. But also, again, I have a toddler, so it is hard to nap
Yeah.
with a toddler. Um, I don't know. I feel more energized. I feel more positive. I've been walking a lot more as well. So like, I think I was going on like a mile loop, and like I also didn't have a walking pad this pregnancy. So I've
Yeah.
just been like way more active, and it's just like, am I energized and therefore I'm going on more walks, or am I more active and that's helping me feel energized? I don't know. But I
Yeah.
will just say that like the differences are pretty clear, and I do feel a lot better. So if I were to get pregnant a third time, I would be geriatric, which is hilarious. But I would try to do very, very similar things. Like, I don't think I'd
Yeah.
really change a whole heck of a lot,
Yeah. Well, you really got
but
to think though, like it's 9 months. It's a long time. So like if you've felt consistently good and you've stayed consistent with these things, it's like I think it, yes, like your body has gone through this before, but even just the mental health benefits of exercise alone could be contributing so much to that, right? And so
yeah,
you can't speak so much to the like expectations around like I've done this before, so it's not as bad because even just
yeah,
having the appropriate expectations can help. But all that combined, like I have to say, like that plus anecdotal evidence of working with clients who have implemented this stuff first to second pregnancy or second to third or whatever number it is, um, we've seen this trend, right? And so that's why I say like maybe a tribute, but I think it's a strong maybe, and it's a strong
yeah,
likelihood of attribution because at the very least, like it didn't get worse, and it definitely like it was more than neutral. So
yeah.
I think it's worth crediting your efforts for.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I'll say too is like, and I just lost my train of thought.
Still have still have
Pregnancy brain. Yeah. So I think a lot of this also comes down to your mentality and like how you think about things. So this pregnancy has been different in the sense that like I haven't had much time to really think about being pregnant, just because I have way more going on at work. I have, again, like I mentioned, I have a toddler. Like, so I know that like with my first pregnancy, I would do like the weekly like updates and this and that, and like I was doing like a pregnancy book, and like I'm like I do not have time for that with my second. So like maybe the fact that I'm not necessarily really thinking about it all the time helps a little
Yeah.
bit, but you know, I've been doing, and I did the same birthing course that I did with my first one. But you know, the course is pain-free birth. And so I highly recommend that for everyone. Just to kind of check it out, just give you a really good idea of like more in-depth, like how birth actually works. And like, because I didn't really, I didn't know that. And so it's really, really, it's very fascinating. But she talks a lot about how it's like pregnancy is kind of like what you make it. And it's like with anything in life, right? And so it's like you can focus on your aches and pains and your ailments and the kind of like woe is me, or it's just kind of like I'm pregnant, like, but that's not going to keep me from doing what I need to do. And so I was a little bit more sick this pregnancy. Like I will say, like I was more nauseous. I was definitely sick a lot more, and actually experienced some of that even into my third trimester, which was interesting how it
Wow.
like went away. Second trimester, you feel fantastic, feel great. And then third trimester comes back and you're like, oh yeah. um, but even with that, I still feel like just having a more positive outlook and not focusing on those things does really make a big difference as far as the symptoms that you're feeling, because I feel like you can really play into that. So again, I chose not to and just focus, like control my controllables. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
what it came down to.
Yeah. Like it almost kind of makes it sound like the time and the headspace that you had last time to like really mull over everything is almost like a privilege that you don't have anymore of like just that time and
Yeah.
space to reflect. But it's like how much thinking is really helping the situation versus like analyzing body image
Mm-hmm.
um you know the whole how the pregnancy is going, time to scroll and research horror stories online. Like, I feel like if there is a lot of time and space to think, it could almost, yeah, be detrimental in the way of there's so many things that could go wrong or the what ifs, and we're stuck with our imaginations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing that I'll mention too is what I felt like with my first pregnancy, like thinking about the context, like I competed like in a bodybuilding show in 2020. So all of 2020 was prep and extreme and lifting and cardio and all these things to get pregnant in 2021. And then having that shift from, okay, well, I've been going to the gym for an hour to 2 hours, you know, to then feel like, oh my gosh, I can't lift at all, because again, kind of going back to what happened. So around the 14-week mark, I did, I was doing something that I wouldn't really consider strenuous. It was just like physical activity, and we had some bleeding. And so I went to the ER, and they were like, oh, it's acute stress related to what you did. And I was like, I freaked out, because I'm like, this wasn't hard. It wasn't something where I was like, ooh, I shouldn't be doing this, or I felt, and I was like, ooh, this is too much. Like, because then I could be like, okay, I just need to pull back a little bit. So I was terrified, because I was like, what if I do anything I don't think it's going to be harmful, and then I start bleeding again? So I just kind of avoided everything, like body weight, anything. And so again, I feel like, okay, I kind of had a little bit more of like an adaptable approach, and being like, I could do some prenatal yoga. I could do body weight exercises. I could be doing some stretching. I could have gone on for more walks, instead of just saying, I'm not doing anything physically active because I'm terrified. And so it is hard, because again, going back to like, my fears were valid, right? Like my feelings were valid, and I didn't know. And it's very, very easy in hindsight to look back and say, I should have done something. But this pregnancy, I have been able to kind of break away from that all or nothing mentality with exercise. And I think a lot of that has to do with having a baby and having to adapt my fitness for Colton. And so it's like, I don't have that luxury of going to the gym whenever I want, or eating a perfect pre-workout meal, or going to the gym and having 1 to 2 to 3 hours by myself. It's just kind of like getting in what I can. And if that's a 15-minute lift, that's great. If it's 30, then that's like even better. So I feel like that really helped as well, to just be like, I can get in whatever I can, and that's great. And if it's, a few times a week, then that's great, rather than feeling like, oh, well, if I can't go to the gym for an hour, then it doesn't matter, and it doesn't count.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great, like, if you're not a mom of a toddler or kid already, then really just learning how to practice that through the ups and downs of, let's say, your first pregnancy, if you're listening to this, then you might have all the time in the world, like Christina's saying, or you might have all these things, um, but you don't have to exercise it that way. And I think it comes back to just like general principles of what we teach for any person who struggles with the all or nothing, the I must go hard, I must go to the gym 6 days a week, I must meal prep like crazy. It's not the best way to go about it, because if you find yourself burning out from time to time, then it's not sustainable. You have to really zoom out and think, like, what can I consistently keep up for a really long period of time? And in this case, 9 months of change and adaptability. And then after that, there's more change and more adaptability to be had. Um, so I'm curious to know, what would you recommend as the kind of like keystone top habits that somebody who's like, I don't live an active lifestyle, I don't really know how fitness during pregnancy should work. Like, what are some of the basics that you would recommend to somebody who's looking to get started living a little bit healthier of a lifestyle during pregnancy?
Yeah. So the ACOG, they recommend 150 minutes of exercise a week. And so that comes down to about 20 minutes a day. And so this does not have to be something like huge, but I think that they determine it as moderate intensity aerobic activity. So, it could be just brisk walking. It could be gardening. It could be workouts. It can be anything like that. But I just think staying active is so, so, so important. And again, I prefer strength training, and I think that that is what I would recommend to anyone. But if you hate the gym, you don't feel comfortable at gym, especially being pregnant, I will say it is very difficult. It's very difficult, because there are not a lot of people, there are not a lot of pregnant women that go to the gym.
Yeah.
I was the only one that I ever saw the entire 9 months that I went to my gym.
Damn.
And I am a little bit more tougher skinned, I would say, because I have gotten a lot of comments, like a lot of comments. And then again, being there at the gym today, and people are like, oh my God, when are you due? You sure you're not having twins? It's like, oh God, I didn't think to ask. Thank you for like, but it is really, really difficult. So if you are not comfortable in that situation, I totally understand. But like, just walk 20 minutes a day. like, I think that that's a great place to start. Or maybe you love yoga and you can start implementing prenatal yoga or stretching, but just being active, and like, it's very easy to be like, oh man, but I don't feel good, or I'm really tired. But like, even for someone who's not pregnant, like, being more active, you will probably find that you actually have more energy, and it helps with, just that like endorphin boost, and like,
Yeah.
you're just going to feel better overall. So whatever type of activity you feel like you enjoy and is easy for you, then I would say let's do that. And again, it's not like you have to jump into that 150 minutes a week like right away. You can start small and just kind of like whatever you're able to fit in. But I would say that exercise during pregnancy is a must. And then the other thing is there is a lot to do with nutrition. So really, really taking your nutrition seriously, because there's a lot of research that shows that, again, it's not just the nutritions that you're getting during your pregnancy, but it also will affect your child for the rest of their life. So it's
No
like,
pressure.
yeah, I know, no pressure, right? But just kind of like, okay, like, it's 9 months, like, I can do anything for 9 months, and just thinking like, okay, I'm setting my baby up for the rest of their life. So you know, it's also going to greatly affect your health throughout the pregnancy. And it's also, even if you're not pregnant or you're thinking about it, it can help a lot with fertility as well. And so the other thing to keep in mind is it can also affect your health risks during pregnancy. So just knowing that, like, okay, this can reduce the risk of like preeclampsia, nausea, constipation, so fun, gestational diabetes, like, all of these things, and then can also decrease your risk of developing type 2 later on. So like, there are a lot of things that you should be focusing on. And so I'm not going to dive into like every single specific nutrient, because it also changes a little bit in, first, second, third trimester. But, making sure that you're eating a balanced diet, which is something that we talk about whether you are pregnant or not. Just making sure that, we're following the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time we're eating whole nutrient dense foods, really, really focusing on your micronutrients here, fiber, things like that, and then throwing in a prenatal. I think that that's really, really great to kind of have all of your bases covered. And then also we want to really focus on choline. So eggs, like, that is one of the best things that you can be eating throughout pregnancy. So I think if you have 3 eggs a day, I think you're meeting the general guidelines for what you need during pregnancy. So yeah, so exercise, nutrition. I also, again, strength training, I think is fantastic. And then also trying to train your core and pelvic floor. So this, again, is going to help for diastasis. And it's going to help, again, just for labor, delivery, but then also your healing postpartum. So that's really important. So if you have no idea what your pelvic floor is, I
We
was,
have an episode on that.
yeah, we have a whole episode on that. But definitely recommend, I say, going to a pelvic floor therapist at least once during a pregnancy and at least once postpartum. They can give you a ton of tools, a lot of things to take away. So that's really important. And then staying hydrated. So that's going to help with a lot of different things as well. Just, again, how you're feeling, health, and everything. It'll also help reduce stretch marks. But again, that's very genetic, but that will help. And then increasing your daily protein intake. So your protein needs are actually a little bit higher during pregnancy. And so again, it's just like, I feel like it's like everything that we should be doing, but just maybe turned up like a teeny tiny bit. But just
Or a
like
lot.
dietary. Yeah, yeah. But dietary protein provides a lot of vital structural proteins that form the building blocks for your child. And so we're just wanting to make sure that we're setting them up for the development of your baby. I think that the NIH recommends it's only like 71 grams of pregnancy, which is
Wow.
wild, which I don't think is actually that high. But I will say, when you're in your first trimester, like, you get a lot of icks when it comes to protein.
Mm.
Like, I know that some people are like, for me, I was like, I couldn't look at chicken, couldn't smell it. There are other people, red meat, like it's really, really difficult to get your protein in. So again, I would say let's just shoot for like, this is like a very blank statement, but like 100 grams.
At
Um,
least, yeah, for sure.
at least, and just kind of go from there. But yeah, and just know that like, yes, there are aversions, but typically those go away by, week 12, week 14. And so you have, 2/3 of your pregnancy where you can still get in that protein intake. So
Yeah.
ideally, we want animal sources of protein, but uh, you know, if you are a vegetarian or vegan, then I don't feel like I need to talk to you because you probably have a really good idea of what you need already. But diversifying your protein sources, just making sure that we're getting all those different amino acids, but that would be kind of what I would recommend.
Yeah. And really with that protein intake, right? It's like you have aversions for the first trimester. Again, let's not fall into the all or nothing mentality
Mm-hmm.
and say, oh, well, the whole pregnancy is screwed. You know, not even going to try with hitting my protein
Right.
for trimesters 2 and 3. Like, no, it's literally 66% of it. Like you can definitely benefit from doing that every day. Every gram counts. So just keeping that in mind. And I mean, like you said, it's the basic principles of things with a couple of different emphases on like different nutrients, but just turning up like the importance a little bit, similar to the menopause episode that we did just a little bit ago, right? It's these basic things. It's not new, not crazy, nothing fancy or flashy, but it is more important in these very very special seasons of life that we're going through transition and change, and our bodies really need the support in that, and nutrition is one of the biggest things that can do that for us.
Yeah. And I will say too, like lifting and exercise during pregnancy, again, we're talking about so many physical benefits for you and your baby, but also just kind of like the mental part of things as well. So it's like, I think it's just so powerful in and of itself. And again, we talk about this when you're not pregnant, but there's just like a different type of like empowerment when you are going to the gym and knowing that like you're taking care of yourself. And I think that also has helped a ton with my body image this pregnancy. And so last pregnancy, I gained 55 pounds. And this pregnancy, I think I'm right at 45.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah. So I'm at 45. So I started around like 130, 132, and I've been around like 175, 176. Um, and I feel very different, even though I'm like, I don't know if I saw my physique, I wouldn't maybe think 45 pounds. Um, but yeah, so just a big difference, but also just, again, the whole like, oh, are you having twins or like you're any day now? And I'm like, I have 3 months left, but thank you. Um, or just like, oh my God, like your belly. And I'm like, I know, I know, like I have a very big belly. Like, yes, I get it. But I know I've been at the gym. I know that I've been eating fantastic. Like, I know that I have been active. I've been exercising. I've been controlling my controllables. So there's nothing I could have done better. There's nothing that I would have changed. So my body just did what it needed to do. And I am at peace with that. And
Yeah.
so if someone says something, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
It's like easier to brush off the stuff because you're like, well,
yeah.
I feel confident with the efforts that I put in, right?
Right, right. And so that first pregnancy, I think I've shared this story, but someone a troll on the internet got on and said something like, you've really let yourself go. And I was still taking care of myself in the sense that like I'm still eating well, like I was going to the gym, I was being somewhat active, not to the extent that I am now. And I was like, whatever, F this guy. And then later I start crying and I was like, it really hurt my feelings. And I'm like, I know that I know that I'm a lot bigger. And also I went from 109 to 185. Like that was a huge change. So that was a lot for my body to go through in maybe like 15 months from the end
Yeah.
of prep to delivery. But yeah, this time around, I'm like, yeah, I know I'm big, but like, it is what it is. So I feel more at peace at that. So I think that like exercise and like it just helps so much, like not just physically, but also that like mentally and emotionally side of things. And like I cannot tell you for I would say like a lot of the older women at the gym gave me like unhinged comments and like a little
Damn.
like yeah. Whereas like people more in my generation or my generation but just were like more like, oh my gosh, like you're so badass, like I wish I had done that during my pregnancy, like you're so inspiring. And so I will say for every like one negative comment you probably get like 5 to 10 like positive ones. So like, and just kind of being like, you never know who you might inspire. So there are
Yeah.
so many people who have reached out to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I stopped going to the gym because of people like this, but I wish I had seen more pregnant women because that might have encouraged me to go and do that too. So you just never know who you're inspiring. And again, you don't have to go and just lift. You can go and walk. You can go and like swim. You can do stretching. You can do yoga. Like you can do whatever it is. But I will say that like it's going to help.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you remembered to bring in the body image because I thought of it earlier today and then I forgot to bring it up.
Yeah.
So
Body image
cool.
is very difficult during pregnancy. It is very difficult. But again, same thing to like this being my second. I'm like, I've done this before. Like,
Yeah.
it's,
Expectation.
yeah, it's temporary. And again, the first time you're like, am I going to be able to get back to this before? And so that can be really scary. And then the second one, it's like, I've done it before. I know how to do it again. Like, we'll do it.
Confidence in
Yeah.
the process, which is
Yeah.
again like why having a coach could be really reassuring in a time like this. A lot of times
Yeah.
it's I can't I can't justify in my mind why would I need a coach during pregnancy? I'm going to get big anyways. Like that's the that's the
Mm-hmm.
stuff I hear. I'm sure you hear too. So it's like, well, here's all the reasons why it could make the experience so much better for you. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
cool.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to both of us. We're both pre and postnatal certified. If you have any questions that we didn't address in this lift, but hopefully you guys are subscribed to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit. Marissa's at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening and hope to see you back next week.